Thanks for having me. I am one of the few that has not left Seattle yet. So nice to see you guys again. Hope it's treating you well. There's been a mass exodus of Christians and conservatives from Seattle, but not just them, right? The two lovely gay men at the end of my street who I just adored. You know, last summer they're like, we are getting out of here. This city is insane, right? And I'm like, oh man, okay, see you later. And then a couple doors down, the pothead, he's like, dude, I can't raise my kid here. We have got to get out of this city. I just, seriously, it's over the top. And I'm like, okay, right? So everybody's leaving. I think some Californians are coming. But yeah, it's a crazy time to be in Seattle. And you guys are exactly right. Like, it's coming for everybody if you don't stand, right? If you don't stand. And if you don't really take on ownership for a lot of the different threats that are going to be facing your state, right? So all of you ordinary people are going to have to become extraordinary in terms of courage, right? And that's kind of my story. Like 10 years ago, I was not a children's rights activist or an author, and I wouldn't even have considered myself a writer. I didn't really feel like I could write very well. I was just a mom. I was a pastor's wife. I had 4 kids. We had just brought our youngest home from China. And I was overwhelmed. I was swamped. And then gay marriage, became a hot topic. And what I heard the other side saying was 2 different things. I heard the other side say, number 1, if you don't support gay marriage, you hate gay people. You're a bigot. You're a homophobe. And there's very few things that make Americans shrink back more than saying you're racist, or you're a bigot, or you're sexist, or whatever. Like, we are free and loving and wonderful people. And those kinds of accusations silence us, right? We hate being called those kinds of things. And that was a really effective tactic, I think, that kept a lot of people quiet for a long time. And it's ridiculous. Because I know you guys, I am one of you guys, you have gay and lesbian friends and family, and you love them, right? You do. Especially because you're Christians, and that's what Christians do. And so I knew that was a lie, especially because my mom has been in a relationship with her partner since I was 10. And I've grown up splitting time between her house and my father's house, and I pray that I am one of the top 2 or 3 people in their lives, that when they think about people who love them, they hopefully think of me. Right, so I knew that accusation of bigotry was ridiculous. But the other thing I heard the other side, the pro-gay marriage side, saying is, kids don't care if they have 2 moms or 2 dads. And I thought, now wait a minute. What you're saying is kids don't care if they've lost a mom or dad. That's really what that means, right? You cannot arrive in the home, a same-sex parented home, without losing your mother or father. Now, my husband and I had been doing youth ministry for a couple decades, and I'll tell you what happens when children are sleep deprived in the middle of a lock-in at 2 a.m. And everybody else is asleep on the floor of the gymnasium, and you've got that one kid that wants to stay up and talk. And I'll tell you what they say. Why did my dad leave? Where is he? Do you think he ever thinks about me? Did he leave because it was my fault? Or they say, do you think that my mom loved the drugs more than me, and that's why she decided to, leave when I was 2? I think about her every day. Or we've sat in hospitals with kids whose father was on life support and brain dead because of a tractor accident, and watched them mourn his loss and watched them suffer without a dad for the next couple of years of their life. And now I work with a lot of children who are intentionally mother or fatherless because they were created through reproductive technologies. And their deep identity struggles of, does my mother even know that I exist, right? She donated her eggs, and they stay up late wondering, who is she? Have I passed her on the street? Do we look the same, right? And now, in my nonprofit, I catalog stories of kids who were created through sperm donation. And even if they know and love the father in their home, they have a desperate drive to find out who is this man that the world tells them is just a donor, but they would say, that's my father. And so I've never met a kid who lost a relationship with their mom or dad that at minimum were not curious. But much of the time, it leaves a lifelong gaping wound. So I was like, that's BS. This whole thing, kids don't care if they have two moms or dads, that is BS. And what I saw is what has taken place, is that redefining marriage has redefined parenthood, right? And unfortunately, conservatives tried to make that issue an issue of religious liberty, which it is, right? And yeah, it's a little bit harder on the florist and the baker and the candlestick maker now that gay marriage is legalized. But you know what's worse? We no longer have any institution in the United States, no government institution that will even say that children should have a mother and father. Because now that constitutes discrimination. We can't even tell the truth about kids and what they need and what they have a right to, because our laws have gotten this so wrong. So I started writing about children and why they needed moms and dads. And the more I dug and the more I researched, the more I realized they don't just need moms and dads. They don't just benefit from moms and dads. They have a right to their mom and dad. They have a right to their mom and dad. Now, I wrote a book on children's rights, and a lot of conservatives are like, children's rights? No, we don't want that in business here. Because children's rights has been misused, right? Especially the left has used it as to cloak all kinds of really dangerous ideologies. But children do actually have a natural right to their mother and father. And we actually have been grounding effective anti-abortion arguments in children's right to life, right? The government doesn't recognize a child's right to life. Nature does. Natural law recognizes a child's right to life. Nature also recognizes a child's right to their mother and father, right? And we go through this in chapter 1 of our book, my co-author and I, who are just lay people, just kind of ordinary girls who are doing what the elites have failed to do. And so we talk about, like, everybody, especially the other side, loves to couch all of their arguments in the language of rights, right? I have a right to housing. I have a right to government-funded birth control, right? I have a right to choose. It seems that anything adults really, really want, they're like, that's a right. It's not, right? When you're talking about natural rights, we have what we call the 3 rules that make it a right test. This will help you know whether or not it really is a natural right. So the first one is, it's pre-government. A right that's a natural right existed before government existed, right? So Second Amendment laws, you've got a right to defend yourself. You don't need a government there to say, we're gonna give you the ability to defend yourself. People have been defending themselves since there were bows and arrows. Okay, this is pre-government. Number 2, a natural right isn't something anyone has to provide for you. So if you have to, like, lay a foundation, sheetrock it, put a roof on it, it's not a natural right, okay? And third, it's not a natural right if it varies by degrees, right? So like a dorm room versus Mar-a-Lago, right? If it can vary in terms of levels, it's not a natural right. It is a natural right if everybody naturally has the same amount. So think about your right to life. Raise your hand if you've got one more life than somebody else. You don't, right? You all get 1. Raise your hand if you've got more than 1 biological mom and dad each. You all get 2, right? You get 1 mom and 1 dad. And so we know that this is a natural right. And we have made such gains against abortion by grounding our arguments in children's rights. So what I want to do is I want to take that same tactic and apply it to marriage and family and say all policy should reflect and respect a child's right to their mother and father, right? Number 1, because children are grieved when they lose it. But number 2, because if we can do it, we will decimate, if we can defend children's rights to their mother and father, we will decimate nearly every social issue that we're facing today, every single one, right? The left especially wants to fix youth homelessness, and so do I. 90% of them are fatherless. We spend a lot of time talking about the epidemic of teen suicide. 67% of teens that commit suicide are fatherless. You're 4 times more likely to live in poverty as a child if you don't have a dad. 63% of girls who get pregnant out of wedlock don't have a dad. Every single issue that we are looking at today, high incarceration rates, high school dropouts, even obesity, it's all tied to whether or not the natural rights of a child to their own mother and father are being protected and respected, right? So this is, I believe, the issue of our time, other than a child's right to life. This is the issue that is going to determine not only are we going to protect the individual hearts of children, but can we thrive as a society, okay? And traditionally, we've always done that through the definition of marriage. Marriage has been the most child-friendly institution the world has ever known. Ever known. Not schools, right? Not Head Start programs, not welfare. Moms and dads married to one another for life. That's it. No government program will replicate it, will ever replicate the benefits. No amount of money will ever fix the problem. It's only moms and dads. So I want to talk briefly about why these rights are so powerful. For 3 reasons, okay? The first one is it gifts children with the 2 adults who are statistically the safest, most connected to, and most protective of them. Okay, now I know heroic step-parents. I know the step-parents who are filling the gap for a negligent biological parent, and they deserve our support and our praise. And I'm grateful for them. But statistically, the safest place for a child is in the home of their married biological mother and father. In fact, the most dangerous place a child can find themselves in America today is in the home of a cohabiting, unrelated man. And you can fact check me. You can get your phone out right now, and you can Google the words mother's boyfriend. And you can tell me what you find. Seriously, like somebody get your phone out. Somebody that has fast internet and doesn't take a long time to unlock. Okay, I want you to Google the words mother's boyfriend. And we're gonna see why it takes more than just having a romantic relationship with somebody's parent to provide the kind of love and security and care as the child's own father. So does anybody pull up any results yet?
Yeah.
What? Give me the top 3.
Mother's boyfriend more likely to kill.
Mm-hmm.
Mother's boyfriend faces murder charges.
Mm-hmm.
3-year-old killed by mother's boyfriend.
Mm-hmm. Right.
1-year-old is killed, mother's boyfriend is arrested. Mother shoots boyfriend because simply she was.
Yeah. So that's it. Rates of filicide, that would be child homicide, drastically escalate when there is the presence of an unrelated man. And so what protecting this natural right of a child does is it gifts them with the 2 people who are the safest, statistically, the safest adults. There are still some abusive biological parents out there. They deserve all of our scorn. But statistically, if you believe that kids should be safe and loved, then you're with me. You believe that children should be known and loved by their mom and dad whenever possible. The other reason, number 2, why this right is so powerful is because these 2 adults give something to children that no other adult can give them, no other person can give them, and that is biological identity. So we have been doing adoption, and we'll talk about adoption a little bit later, because I'm pro-adoption, don't freak out. But we've had adopted kids for close to 100 years. We've had children created through sperm donation for close to 50. We've had egg donor kids for about 20. And you know, most of them at some point will take to the internet and spend a couple years searching for their mother and searching for their father. Even children who are raised in loving heterosexual homes, right? So my adopted son, we love him. I'll tell him, baby, we are divine plan B for you. Right? We are so grateful that you're in our home. But I cannot fully compensate for everything that he has lost. He has questions that I can't answer, right? There is something that only his China mom and dad will be able to tell him, hopefully someday. And it's something that seems to matter to kids, right? We know that children created through sperm donation, about 60% of them would say, my sperm donor is half of who I am. 80% would say, I'm curious about who my biological father or mother is, even if they've been raised in a loving home, because something about that biological identity matters to kids, and only their mom and dad can give it to them. And third, the other reason why this is such a powerful natural right is it gives children the perfect gender balance every single time. Every single time. Now, I think it's fascinating that the left has passed different bills in California, for example, mandating that there be female representation on corporate boards, or celebrating if a female candidate of the right political persuasion is nominated to the Supreme Court, right? If she doesn't have the right political persuasion, not so much, right? But they seem to think that the female justices have something distinct to offer when it comes to judicial decisions. And yet, the left has relentlessly attacked the one institution that gets the gender balance perfectly every single time, and that's marriage, right? Natural marriage always provides the perfect complementarity of gender in the home of kids. And kids love it, right? Moms parent differently than dads. When I'm home, my kids get lots of broccoli. Tonight, guaranteed, they are eating red vines for dinner, okay? I am pretty regimented about what we call mundane caregiving, and dads bring the fun, right? Moms are more focused on fine motor skills, like chopping the veggies and cutting the crafts, and dads are more focused on gross motor skills, jumping, running, wrestling, climbing, digging, igniting, right? I mean, that's kind of what dads do. And you know what? Kids love it, and they need both. And so when we protect this critical child right, we get it all, right? We get children whose hearts don't have to suffer the loss of losing their mom or dad. We get the developmental benefits of both halves of humanity being represented in the home. And we maximize child safety, right? So that's why this right is so powerful. So I want to talk a little bit about the issues that are attacking children's rights. What are the areas where children's rights are under attack? Well, the first one was, the first big one that is recent, was the definition of marriage, right? We got that so wrong. We got that so wrong by not putting the emphasis on children where it belonged. Because now, redefining marriage has redefined parenthood, and now a lot of what I do in my organization is writing bills to legislators saying, please don't take the words mother and father out of parenthood laws. Please don't remove biology. Biology and adoption used to be the two requirements for parenthood, or the two bases for parenthood. Now, they're saying, well, intent is a basis for parenthood. And what they mean by that is if an adult intends to parent a child that doesn't belong to them, and they have enough money to assemble sperm and egg and womb, then the adult can walk out of the hospital with an unrelated child, right? So we used to call that the buying and selling of people. And now we call it progress, okay? So the definition of marriage, we lost on it, and it was a major loss, and it's gonna have a lot of implications. But the original redefinition of marriage is something that conservatives don't talk about a whole lot, and that was no-fault divorce. So it used to be that we knew that marriage was about more than adult feelings, right? It really had a critical social influence, impact, because it wasn't just about what adults wanted. There was something even more important, and that was the kids, right? And what they needed. And there are reasons for divorce. That's why we used to have at-fault divorce, so you could divorce somebody who was at fault, who was adulterous or abusive. And those are good reasons to leave a marriage if you need to. But these days, 70% of marriages end not because somebody's at fault. Oftentimes, it's somebody being divorced completely against their will, a totally innocent spouse whose life is going to be wrecked, and the kids who then have to deal with ping-ponging between homes. And one of the things we do at my nonprofit is we gather the stories of kids who have lost a relationship with their mom or dad. About 40% of children post-divorce will lose contact with their non-custodial parent altogether after 2 years. It's really common that once your parents don't love each other anymore, that you lose contact with one of them altogether. And even if you're only splitting time, right, even if you have the best case scenario where you're getting 50% of each, there was a story that one woman shared on my website where she said, it was so difficult because I felt like a nomad, you know, and all of the different people that I loved so much in one house didn't even know that the people at the other house really even existed. I would miss out on certain events that mattered over here because I was with my other family, right? Or oftentimes, the thing that shocked me the most writing my book was actually in the chapter on divorce, where I learned that 50% of kids who grow up in 2 different homes develop 2 different personalities. They have to become a different person between the drive from mom's house to dad's house, because so different are the rules, whether that's screen time or religion or, just they have to keep different secrets. I mean, it's crazy. So that was the original redefinition of marriage. That was where we said, you know what, marriage is about making adults happy. And when you cease to be happy, it can cease to be a marriage. Well, gay marriage picked up on that and said, oh, well, if marriage is just about making adults happy, being married to somebody of the same sex makes me happy. So I guess that's a marriage. And that's now the going definition of marriage in this country. So much so that the town of Somerville, Massachusetts last year legalized polygamy. Because if that's the definition of marriage, whatever makes adults happy, some adults are happy being married to 7 people. Okay? When we step away from a child-centric understanding of marriage, anything goes. Same-sex parenting, right, is now being promoted. One of the things that we do at our organization is we have a story bank for kids, and one of the categories of those kids is kids with LGBT parents. And what these kids distinctly suffer from, so the children of divorce suffer from a lot of instability and sort of living 2 different lives. The children who have 2 moms or 2 dads suffer from what we call mother hunger and father hunger, okay? Where just because you're well loved by 2 women, that doesn't mean that your longing for a father is satisfied. Just because you're well loved by 2 dads doesn't mean that you don't need a mom. And my friend Samantha shared a story about her growing up where she was raised by her father and his boyfriend. And they were very nice and they loved her a lot. And she said, when I was 5, I remember I was in kindergarten and we were watching The Land Before Time. And I saw that this little dinosaur, Littlefoot, lost his mother. And I suddenly went, wait a second, what is mother? I didn't even know that there was a thing called mother. And then I realized that it was a woman who was your parent. And then I realized I wanted that woman. And she said, I spent the rest of the day crying in the arms of a teacher I would never see again for a mother that I didn't know I had. And she talked about her mother hunger, where she would go to every woman in her life, whether it was her aunts or her dad's lesbian friends, and after 10 minutes or so of just having some female connection, she'd say, will you be my mother? Are you my mother? What about you? Will you be my mother? Because being well loved by 2 women or 10 women will never replace the love of a father. Kids need it and they crave it and they have a right to it. Sperm donation, egg donation, and surrogacy, that is the intentional separation of children commercially at conception from their mother or father. I know that's probably a new issue to some of you, but it's very serious. This is the closest since slavery that we've become to the buying and selling of people. And these children do not fare well. They disproportionately struggle with substance abuse, depression, trust issues with their parents, identity struggles. And like I said, many of them will go on long searches to find their missing parent or their 2 half-siblings or their 200 half-siblings that are scattered all across the world or maybe across the street and they don't even know it. We're going to have a little chat about surrogacy tomorrow at 1:30 here. So if you want to know more about that, we can talk about it. But here's the cliff notes. We love babies. Raise your hand if you love babies. Same. And we think, well, surrogacy is just about babies. It's not. Surrogacy and sperm and egg donation are about on-demand designer babies shipped worldwide. That's what this is. It is the complete commercialization of the baby creating process. Only about 7% of children created in a laboratory will be born alive. Only 7% of children created through the IVF process, whether that's with the donor sperm or with the 2 genetic parents, whether that's surrogacy or not, only 7% will be born alive. This is not a pro-child process. Those children will probably spend most of their life in a freezer then they'll be thawed and discarded because they're non-viable, thawed and discarded because they're not the right sex. They won't survive the transfer to the womb, or they'll be selectively reduced, that is, aborted during the surrogacy because too many embryos have taken. That is why abortion is built into nearly every surrogacy contract, because abortion serves as quality control and quantity control when it comes to reproductive technologies. Reproductive technologies are not good for kids. And I want to spend a brief time talking about adoption, because the second you say biology matters, all the adoptive parents in the room are like, whoa girl, right? And all of us who are working on pro-life issues and care about pro-life, we understand that adoption is, if the mother cannot keep the baby, adoption is the best option, right? But we can walk and chew gum at the same time, okay? We can recognize that adoption, like what I said, is divine plan B. But most adoptive parents would say, look, my kid does have some additional challenges because they lost something that they had a natural right to. Now, that doesn't mean that abortion is bad. That means it's redemptive. But you're redeeming something that was very, very hard and broken. And so the summary is, because we spend the entire chapter 9 of our book talking about adoption, why adoption is an institution centered around the well-being of children. Reproductive technologies are a marketplace centered around the desires of adults. But here's the short answer. A just society cares for orphans. It doesn't create them. And that is what we're doing in the reproductive technology world, is we are creating mother and fatherless children, and those children are not faring well. So what do, right? Because the problems are large, our enemies are great. And the answer is, you have to become an activist too, right? Academia is gone, right? It's very, very hard to even find good studies, social science studies on a lot of these, because the social sciences have been so corrupted. Our politicians are feckless and cowardly, right? Once you're looking down the face of a 6-figure check from Big Fertility, they're like, does this really matter? It really doesn't, you know. Celebrities, education, there's nobody that's going to do this for you. Nobody is going to do this for you. Nobody is going to defend kids, whether in the womb or on this side of the womb. It is just you. It is just you ordinary people and me ordinary people, right? Farmers, ranchers, small business owners, pastors' wives, right? It's just us. That's all that's left when it comes to defending the most vulnerable. Well, that's just rude. That's just rude. I mean, I know that I was close to my time, but I mean, you could have sent me a signal. This is horrible, right? So it's just you. I mean, I'm a pastor's wife. I do youth group every Sunday night. I don't need a mic. And that's it, right? It's ordinary people that have the courage to do what the elites refuse to do, and that is you. And the good news is you've got truth on your side. And like my good friend Doug Mainwaring said, he's a gay man and a traditional marriage supporter and a fierce advocate for children's rights. He said, you will never be on the wrong side of history when you're fighting for children, okay? And that's what we need to do. So thank you.